welcome back to our channel. The fragile illusion of control shattered in an instant as Andre's eyes locked on the scene before him, a sight so unbearable that his body reacted before his mind could register its enormity. Devon and Dani were entangled in a forbidden embrace, lips pressed together in a reckless moment that ignited a storm inside him. The air itself seemed to grow heavier, charged with betrayal so thick it suffocated him. The blood in his veins surged like fire, boiling with a primal fury that left no room for reason, no opening for restraint, no chance for him to retreat from the precipice on which his world now hung. It was not jealousy in its simplest form, nor was it mere heartbreak. It was devastation that devoured his chest, a crushing awareness that everything he believed to be secure had been fractured in the most brutal way. The weight of Dani's betrayal slammed into him harder than any physical blow ever could, for in that kiss he saw not just an act of weakness but a deliberate step across a boundary from which there was no return. In the pit of his stomach, rage erupted like a volcano, violent and consuming, and before his rational mind could catch up with his instincts, his body was already moving. His fists clenched as if commanded by some darker force, his muscles coiled with explosive energy, and his vision tunneled until the only thing that mattered was the man standing between him and the wreckage of his trust. Devon became the embodiment of everything stolen from him: love, loyalty, security, pride, and Andre launched himself forward, closing the distance in a blur of motion. The first strike landed with brutal force, the sound sharp enough to silence the breath of everyone who bore witness. Devon staggered under the impact, his body folding momentarily from the blow, but the shock did little to slow Andre's fury. He swung again, each punch thrown not only with the strength of his body but with the full weight of his anguish. Every strike was punishment for every whispered secret, every hidden glance, every betrayal that had been simmering unnoticed until it erupted into the open. Dani stood frozen, her face pale with horror, as the man she once thought she loved transformed into something unrecognizable, an inferno of pain with no outlet except destruction. Chaos rippled outward, voices rising in panic but blending into nothingness as Andre's roar drowned them out. His fists found their mark again and again, until Devon's defenses were nothing more than feeble attempts to ward off the storm. Blood flecked the corner of Devon's lip, but Andre saw no blood, no face, no humanity in front of him anymore. He saw only a usurper, a thief of intimacy, a reminder that Dani had willingly surrendered to temptation and shattered the fragile sanctity of their bond. The violence escalated with every heartbeat, and though the room filled with gasps and cries, no one dared step between them. The sheer ferocity of Andre's wrath was untouchable, a force of nature too dangerous to intercept. The pounding of fists against flesh reverberated like drumbeats of war, each one echoing Andre's unraveling sanity. The crowd's paralysis was not just fear of being struck but awe at witnessing a man consumed so entirely by betrayal that he ceased to resemble the person they once knew. Devon crumpled under the barrage, his strength faltering, yet Andre did not relent. His rage demanded more, demanded obliteration, demanded that pain be inflicted until the agony inside him was matched in equal measure outside. Dani's voice cracked in silent pleas that no one could hear, her hands trembling as if to reach out yet unable to summon the courage to intervene. She knew in that moment that the kiss which had felt reckless but fleeting had detonated something irreversible. As the fight raged on, the atmosphere thickened with dread, and every passing second dragged the room deeper into the abyss of violence. The sound of bodies colliding, of labored breaths and heavy grunts, built a rhythm of destruction. Andre's fury had slipped past the realm of anger into obsession, an all-consuming need to punish, to annihilate the man who had dared cross into forbidden territory. Devon's attempts to resist weakened, his face bearing the marks of Andre's relentless assault, but Andre's eyes burned with a fire that saw no surrender. He could not be appeased by weakness, nor could he be softened by pity. The betrayal was too raw, too fresh, too monstrous to allow even the slightest pause. The people watching knew that what unfolded before them was more than a fight, it was a man disintegrating in real time. Andre's love had mutated into violence, his heartbreak into savagery, his devotion into a hunger for destruction. The lines between right and wrong, justified anger and unforgivable brutality, blurred beyond recognition. In his mind, the betrayal could only be cleansed by blood and bruises, by reducing Devon to nothing, by erasing the evidence of that kiss through sheer force. Dani's tears streaked her cheeks, but they carried no power to halt the storm she had unleashed. She was the catalyst, the reason, the wound that would not heal, and as Andre continued his onslaught, the cruel truth sank in that nothing could ever restore what had been lost. The scene spiraled further, each second stretching into eternity as onlookers exchanged desperate glances, wondering who would finally intervene, who would risk being consumed by Andre's fury to save Devon from being destroyed. But hesitation reigned, and silence clung to the edges of the chaos, broken only by the raw sounds of violence. Somewhere within Andre's heart a fragment of humanity still lingered, but it was buried so deep beneath the tidal wave of rage that even he could not reach it. His body was driven by instinct, by betrayal, by the primal need to lash out against the unbearable weight pressing down on his soul. By the time the first brave hands attempted to pull him away, Andre had already crossed a threshold from which there was no return. He was no longer merely a man betrayed, he had become a storm of destruction, and even as others dragged at his arms, his fist still sought to land blows, his voice still erupted in guttural cries of fury. Dani's sobs filled the space, but the sound only twisted deeper into his chest, fueling rather than extinguishing the fire. For in her tears he saw no remorse, only confirmation that the love he thought indestructible had been cheapened, traded, discarded. And as Devon struggled to rise beneath the weight of bruises and broken pride, Andre's shadow loomed over him like the embodiment of vengeance itself. The fight had scarred more than flesh, it had shattered bonds, obliterated trust, and left behind a fracture that could never be healed. What had begun as a kiss stolen in secrecy ended in a battlefield of shattered emotions, where the price of betrayal was written in blood and silence. Yet even as Andre was pulled away, his chest heaving, his body trembling with the aftermath of his fury, his eyes remained locked on Devon with a promise that the violence was far from over. The chaos had not ended with fists and fury, it had only begun. The storm that erupted in that room was destined to ripple through every corner of their lives, unraveling friendships, poisoning love, and leaving devastation in its wake. For once trust is broken so violently, once betrayal is exposed so brutally, no one walks away unscathed.